Hello and welcome to Lessons Learned, a monthly podcast from UK Sailmakers, where we learn about other sailing adventures and experiences to help you sail with confidence. Today, I am your host, Brendan Huffman from UK Sailmakers Los Angeles Loft. Our guest is Rod Pimentel, an experienced racer and cruiser from San Francisco, who recently won his class for the second time in a row in the Pacific Cup race, a 2,100-mile course from San Francisco to Hawaii. Rod skippered his Cal 40 AZURE with a crew of 4, overcoming unusually light winds at the beginning and some seasoned competitors, including 3 other well-sailed Cal 40s. We invited Rod to talk today about his races to Hawaii, as well as some of his cruising experiences in the South Pacific and in the Mediterranean with his family. Welcome to Lessons Learned, Rod.
Well, thank you for having me.
Great to have you. Great to see you in Kaneohe. I love seeing Cal 40s on the race course, especially when they do so well. So this was your second time in a row winning your class in the Pacific Cup. And it was rough going at the beginning, not because it was stormy, because it was so light. So after you tacked out of the bay and passed the gate, it looked like you and the others took a big dip south along the coast, which is almost unheard of. What factored into your decision to do that?
Yeah, we were all trying to navigate the best we could, downloading our grid files and using Expedition to look for the fastest route. But it was it was really tough because we were basically looking at, a good 24 hours or plus of just really, really light air. A low pressure system had moved in just off the coast of San Francisco. And so all of us were scrambling to try to find a way around it. And we ended up kind of squeezing through the middle of it, which was painful. But in the end, we were able to come out the other side and still do pretty well.
So what kind of sails were you using? What were the wind conditions? Were you doing circles at any point? I'm sure the wind was on the nose, as it always is in those conditions.
We basically started with the number one. It was actually flooding pretty hard. We all struggled to get around Mile Rock and then start working our way south toward Montera. So we were all sailing with a 1, and we were trying to point as well as we could while staying out of the current. And so, we all hugged the coast pretty closely just to try to reduce our current impact, but then again, not getting sucked into the Montera hole, which is kind of a local phenomenon just south of here that you have to make sure that you avoid.
Yeah, so the Cal 40s all seemed pretty close on the first couple days. Who broke out first once the prevailing wind started reappearing, and how did it go from there?
Viva really did a great job of navigating through that low. This is the first year that we had Starlink, which was a huge advantage for us, having high-speed internet on the boat, and then being able to download very detailed grid files, which were extremely valuable. Basically, they found a very small little line just down the coast, all the way down to Monterey. Just enough wind to keep the boat moving. They sailed with a jib top, which I think was a very smart strategy, basically, just so they were able to crack it just a little bit off and keep their boat speed going. Where Green Buffalo and us basically tried to punch directly through the low. That's kind of what Expedition was telling us to do. So both of us held to that strategy. Highlander, they tried to go over the top of it, which it took a little bit longer for them to do it. And then in the end, they didn't have the same lanes that we had after getting through it. So it was kind of a crapshoot, but in the end, Viva, I think, had a better strategy by going way south. And again, that wasn't on Expedition. So it was really their navigator's call, where he made a really, really smart decision at that point.
But you eventually caught them. So when did the race become a typical race to Hawaii with the trades and the Spinnaker up, sunny skies, beautiful sunsets?
Yeah, it happened actually pretty quickly. I mean, like 2.5 days out, we had the Spinnaker up, head stay reaching to try to converge with everybody. And again, all 4 of us were slowly kind of coming together, but Viva had made enough southerly. They had a kind of a hook on all of us being down there. And then, with the wind coming the way it did, they did really well. So, yeah, but after 2.5 days having the Spinnaker up, that was pretty amazing.
So back in the day when I would go with my dad on Cal 40s, back in the 70s, when it was head stay reaching, we'd all have star cut Spinnakers. I'm sure you don't have any left in your inventory, so I'm assuming you guys had several asymmetrical Spinnakers. What were you flying on the reach, and then what did you change to when the wind came aft?
We actually have all symmetrical spinnakers. I designed the boat where we actually pulled the stanchions and the lifelines in just inside of the shrouds. So we're able to sheet the spinnaker pretty well, just head stay reaching. And then we were able to fly a point 0.8 at first when when the wind was way forward. And as the wind slowly started to come back, we have a flat point 0.8, we have a deep point 0.8, and then we would go to our point 0.6. We used a lot of spinnakers. Unfortunately, we didn't blow out any. It was definitely not nice having that kind of inventory.
I'll bet. Now, you took a crew of four, and you told me that's what you usually take. Four seems a little light on crew for a 40-foot boat on a long race like that. How does it work out for you? What goes into decision making on who you invite?
Yes, the main thing with going with four, well, the advantages obviously are you have less water, less food, you have a lot more room in the boat for, comfort and whatnot. But when you go with four, you really have to have four good drivers because everyone has to drive. And so we go four on and four off. So basically, when you get up, you drive for 2 hours, you crew for 2 hours, and then you sleep for four. We're in this rotation, basically from the beginning of the race all the way to the end. And so, at the very beginning, because of the time change, you're waking up, at daybreak, and then all of a sudden you're waking up at night. And so it's interesting as you traverse all the way across the Pacific how that changes. But having four has worked out really well for us. The problem is taking time off to navigate and cook and do the other things because you are a little short on hands. It takes a little bit away from your sleep. But as you get closer to Hawaii, you're so excited to make landfall. Sleeping is kind of a secondary thing at that point.
And what about jibing and sail changes? Does the whole crew come on deck for that, or can two usually manage it okay?
Yeah, we can do it with two, but it's hard. It's way better to have all four of us on deck. The way we run the boat is we have the person on the driving is also working the pole, and then one of our guys is on foredeck, one of our guys is on the main, and then we have another guy on the halyards. It's definitely a little bit lean to make it happen, but you're not making so many maneuvers that you can't do it. Sometimes if it's light, we'll do peels as well. But as soon as it starts getting heavy, then we'll usually just douse and then reset on the same board when we're making sail changes.
You mentioned you took symmetrical spinnakers, which you don't see as often anymore. When you jibe, did you use the old way with two spinnaker poles or just do a standard dip pole?
No, we used two spinnaker poles, and it's worked out really well for us because you have total control of it when you raise both of those poles and then jibe and then douse the leeward pole. So it works out really well for us. And again, the Cal 40 likes to sail really deep, and so having the symmetrical kites I think allows us to sail at those really deep angles that when it starts blowing 30. It's really nice to be able to sail deep rather than trying to heat it up with an asymmetrical. At least that's what we found in our boat.
So you said when it starts blowing 30, sounds like you probably had some good rides. Any broaches, any wraps?
No, we were fortunate. Again, sailing with a Spinnaker net, we were able to avoid the wraps. We pretty much sailed a solid race. Again, we only had one roundup for the whole, 2,000 miles. At the very end, we were really pushing it to try to lay the finish line from about 200 miles out. It was a challenge as the wind would pick up, go forward, go aft as you start getting really close to the islands. But
Mhm.
we were able to pretty safely and securely nail it. So that was good.
Now you mentioned Spinnaker net. I recommend them to boats I inspect for Pacific Cup as well as customers, and most people roll their eyes. Um, but you use a Spinnaker net. Why?
Well, especially at night, right? At night, when you don't have a lot of light and you really can't see the kite that well, you're really focusing on your instruments and your compass to steer. Things happen, right? Where all of a sudden, you just get a wind shift or it collapses. Also, for your less experienced drivers, they make a slight mistake, and that Spinnaker net is a lifesaver. Definitely helped us out in several cases, and pretty much an invaluable tool when you're sailing at night. When we sail during the day, we never, carry it if it's not going to be an overnight passage.
I agree. On our boat this year, we could have used a Spinnaker net, but that's a topic of another podcast. I want to go back to your sail inventory. In the old days, Cal 40s were carrying bloopers or streakers. Did you guys carry one?
No,
Did you retire those sails
I
20
know
years
that's
ago?
kind of the rage, but no, we don't have one. If one came with a boat, we'd be tempted, but
Mhm.
yeah, no, we haven't got one of those.
All right. So you work with Sylvain, my colleague in San Francisco. at the UK Sailmakers loft. Did Sylvain recommend a blooper or a Spinnaker staysail?
Yeah, we have a Spinnaker staysail that's a fantastic sail. As long as you have a lot of apparent across the deck, the Spinnaker staysail is a fantastic tool to have, and you can move the tack around a little bit on the foredeck to have it draw a little bit better. But as soon as the wind starts coming way aft, we found that the Spinnaker staysail, isn't as effective and it collapses quite a bit, and so then we'll douse it. But it's definitely up for several days while the wind's a little bit farther forward.
Is that the sail you used when it got really light at the beginning, or did you have a dedicated wind seeker?
In this case, we went really from a number one with leeward weight, on the rail, trying to
Mhm.
keep the boat moving. But it was just one of those years where it just went right from a number one to a Spinnaker.
So I also noticed something unusual about your boat. You use a Dacron main, your head soles are laminate, and you're using high-tech sailcloth on your spinnakers. Why the Dacron main? Why not a laminate?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We found that the Dacron mains tend to hold up a little bit better when they're out in the sun going downwind, and it's really downwind sail. So Sylvain worked with me to design that main that's very, very full and it's light. Since you have a very, very few upwind legs of this race, it's a great sail for the deep reaching and the running. That's it costs a little bit less, but it really holds up in the sun as well. So that was the strategy behind that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I also want to say on the classic boats, I think the white sails look nicer. Sometimes the black mainsails just they look a little out of place on these boats that were built in the 60s.
Mhm.
Rod, tell me a little bit about your affection for the Cal 40. Why did you choose that boat?
Yeah, so I grew up on a Cal 28. My dad had that boat, and that was our family boat when we grew up. So we sailed all over the bay and the Delta, and down as far south as Santa Cruz on our Cal 28, which is a great boat. I still have it, and I still race it in our beer can series here in Alameda. And so as we were looking for a bigger boat, the Cals obviously, were near and dear to my heart. The boat we had previously was a Jeanneau 36. We sailed on that boat all the way across the Pacific down to New Zealand, and that's where our first son was born. But then after that trip, we came back home and we weren't sailing the Jeanneau as much. And it really wasn't, ideal for doing a lot of the races I wanted to do because I wanted to do more ocean racing. And one of the members at our club had a Cal 40. I was helping with the race committee down to Santa Barbara for the Coastal Cup, and he came in on the boat, and we had already sold our Jeanneau, and I was kind of like figuring out what kind of boat we wanted to get. And I just saw it for the first time, and I was like, "Oh my God, this is awesome!" And then you start doing some of the research, and you talk to people, and you hear about the history of the boat. It just became apparent that was the boat that we wanted. So it was a full-on search to get a Cal 40 at that point.
Interestingly enough, after I was born, my parents bought a Cal 28.
Oh, did
So I
they?
don't remember it very well, but there are photos of me as a toddler and a baby running around the foredeck. I love those big decks, um, cruising and racing. And my dad actually took the boat up to San Francisco to do Coastal Cup
Oh,
back
wow.
when I think it was the Morph fleet for boats under 30 feet, San
Right,
Francisco to San Diego. Took like
right.
5 or 6 days. Sounds awful, but they enjoyed it, and we share your admiration for these Lapworth designs. So a lot of the Cal 40s have gone through refits. Back in the day, they all oil canned, but they're not doing that as much. Did your boat go through any kind of refit?
Yeah, I mean, I bought the boat in 2004, and we did the 2005 Transpac. I learned a lot from sailing in that first Hawaii race. It was fantastic because when we got to Hawaii, there were 14 Cal 40s all lined up right next to each other. So you couldn't help but go on board and look at what other people had done to upgrade them. Also, I talked a lot with Stan and Sally Honey about what they had done to Illusion. And so I had a roadmap of all the things that I wanted to do. Obviously, it's a financial commitment to really plunge into all those things at once. And so there's some skippers that have done that, which is amazing because they can do it all at once. For me, we just started doing it. Every year we'd have a new project, and we started in 2006. We did hull the deck joint. Then we got a new Ballinger spar, and then we started looking at trying to fixing the oil canning. So we started adding some bulkheads underneath the bunks just to try to stiffen the boat just a little bit. and then refairing the keel. It's just I've worked on every single aspect of this boat from stem to stern. So the boat's over at Svenson's right now in Richmond, and the engine's out, and we're reglassing the shaft tube. So it's definitely a labor of love. You have to really enjoy it to get into the inner workings of the boat. But the boat has such a great heart. It's a joy to work on her and keep her sailing.
I'll bet. And they look fabulous. Probably very few of our listeners know what oil canning is. So you have an engineering background, Rod. Can you
Yeah.
explain quickly what oil canning is and how disconcerting it is
Yeah.
when you feel it for the first time?
Yeah, so the whole basically hull will basically flex as you're sailing. When you get a big wave, like a quartering wave, and you'll feel the entire boat, actually kind of shift, and it's not a natural, movement. Luckily, the way the Californias were built, the hulls are like an inch thick of solid fiberglass, so they're heavy, but they're strong. And modern boats now, are so stiff that the boats really don't move in that way. But the cows, the more modern ones that people have retrofitted, they've really done a great job of replacing all the bulkheads and really trying to stiffen them up. But it takes quite a bit of engineering to put in all of the bracing that's needed to stop the hull from moving. And it is quite a bit faster, if you could do that, especially to try to secure the keel to the hull so you don't have the keel flexing with the hull as well. So anyway, the boats, when they were designed that way, they were able to handle all of those movements. It's just one of the unique qualities of the boat.
I want to talk about your cruising experience. Starting with your Jeanneau 36, you told me you had done the Puddle Jump, which is a jaunt to Tahiti. And where does the Puddle Jump take off from?
The Puddle Jump leaves really from several points down in Mexico, and Latitude 38 did a great job back in '96 when we first did it, just to try to coordinate people that were making the passage across the South Pacific. We left in '95, and went down to Mexico. We just missed going on the Ha, so that was something that was definitely on our bucket list that we finally did here a couple years ago. But back then, my wife and I left on our 1 year anniversary, and we cruised Mexico for 3 months. We got to meet a bunch of folks that were going to be sailing to the South Pacific, and then we heard about in Puerto Vallarta they're going to have this kickoff for the first puddle jump. And so it was great to meet a bunch of people. Latitude did a great job of pulling people together, and it was great just to share stories. We set up back in those days. It was all on the SSB, so we set up radio schedules so we can all check in at certain times as we're making our passages to the Marquesas. But it was a great way to pull everyone together for such an important event. We went down, we turned the corner, we went up to La Paz, then we went to Puerto Vallarta, then we went all the way down to Zihuatanejo, and then but in order to provision and get our last, few boat projects done, we went back up to Puerto Vallarta because they just had better services up there before we
Yeah.
left.
And how long were you at sea before you made landfall?
22 days.
And it was
And
just the two of you?
it was yeah, just the two of us, and it was just a fantastic experience. Just leaving land. It was the longest passage that I'd ever done, and it was we had great weather. We didn't really have any no real squalls until we got close to the intertropical convergence zone.
Mhm.
And then we had several until we crossed it. But we had a great passage, and I tell you what a fantastic sight, when you see the Marquesas for the first time.
Yeah, I can't wait to do that. I'm hoping the Tahiti race comes back in the next few years. I know several people in Southern California and Northern California have expressed interest. So that's something I'd like to do. But the puddle jump seems even better because you don't have to make sail changes every few hours. You can take less crew, catch more fish. Did you fish on the way?
We did. It seems like we found most of the fishing was great along closer to land. So basically within a couple 100 miles from the North American coast, and then when we got close to the Marquesas, that's when we started catching fish. But in the middle, it was pretty surreal. It was like, we didn't see any planes, we didn't see any ships, there wasn't that many birds. It wasn't until you got close to land that you start seeing all those things again.
Oh, that's interesting. You mentioned squalls. Are they more intense in that part of the Pacific than they are on the way to Hawaii, do you think, or not?
Well, we had the pack up that we just did was probably the one of the windiest races that I've done, and we saw more squalls this time than we've ever seen on a Hawaii race, and the squalls were really intense. I mean, we had almost 40 knots in most of them, and it got really exciting when you have your when you have your spinnaker up, and then it goes from 20 to 40. So it's exciting, but back then it just and the people I've talked to too said the squalls seem like they're getting more intense and more intense, and I'm not sure if that's global warming or what, but back when we crossed the equator, I mean, the squalls would get up to maybe 25, but they
Mhm.
wouldn't go to 40. So it wasn't nearly as bad, and we were cruising anyway. So we would have asymmetrical reacher that we had in a sock that we could easily collapse, and then we had a roller furling number one, so it was easy to shorten sail while the squalls happened, and until we got through them. But it's really cool. I mean, on there on the equator, because these squalls are very, very defined, and you see them. It's kind of eerie, seeing them coming at you. These little white funnel or black funnels as they're moving across the ocean. It's really, really, really neat.
I agree with you about the intensity of the squalls. This was my 10th race to Hawaii. And in 2019, we never got hit by a squall, which is, just the luck of the draw. But
Yeah.
this time there were several, and they did seem intense. And we did top out at 40 knots
Did you?
on one of them, probably 100 miles out from Hawaii, and it was thrilling. Thankfully, the A2.5 held through it, because if we tried taking it down, it would have shredded.
Yeah.
I asked John Jourdain earlier this year about squalls, and he's coming up, I think, on 70 crossings
Wow.
between the West Coast and Hawaii. He's written books about meteorology and weather, heavy weather sailing. He said in his lifetime, the squalls are much more intense than they were when he was younger. So that's probably the most experienced sailor in the Pacific, at least, who's sailed around the world. So there's something to that. And I think that's another lesson, not just a spinnaker net for these races to Hawaii, but be prepared for these intense squalls that come through. Now, you mentioned you also had a catamaran at one point, and you guys were cruising in the Med. You said it was a Leopard 47?
When we were cruising the first time, we just had so much fun. But we got pregnant on the way, and our first son was born in New Zealand. And so when we came back, our second son was born here in Alameda. And then we were all saying, well, it'd be really great to go cruising again, but we want to go with our kids, and we want them to be a little bit older so that they can enjoy it too. So we waited until they were 9 and 12, and then we started shopping for boats to go cruising in the Med. And we were able to find a Leopard 47 that had come out of charter from moorings, and so we bought that down in Saint Lucia, and so then we started the whole project of trying to get a boat ready for cruising when you're living in Alameda, but then start sailing from Saint Lucia, which was really a challenge. I built this crate in my garage for all the stuff that we wanted to add to the boat, the radar and the water maker, the all of those things, and had it shipped to St. Lucia, and then unpacked it and got it tried to get the boat all ready. But it was definitely one of those examples of working on boats in exotic places, because it took a long time before we got everything done. But we had a great trip. We took 2 years with our kids, homeschooled them on the boat, and we sailed from Saint Lucia all the way to Turkey in the Mediterranean and then back again. And then
Mhm.
yeah, so it was a fantastic experience for them.
If my family were to do that, I can't imagine the kind of bickering that would have occurred every day. Um, but I guess most families aren't like ours. I assume everyone got along, and your kids, I wonder if that helped their bond a little bit. How did they get along?
I thought they got along great. I mean, we're definitely a team of four, and I still have this vision med mooring in Turkey, where a lot of the Turkish coast is very steep, right? And they have a lot of trees on the shoreline. And I still remember my oldest son was up, we're working the windlass, dropping the anchors or backing up, and my wife had the stern line, tied in her teeth and jumping over. And my youngest son is feeding the line all the way to her, and she swims to shore, ties the line, ties the bowline around the tree, right? And then my youngest son's pulling it in. I'm backing up the boat, and we got her all. I mean, it was just such an amazing experience, and we had so many of those things as a family.
What do you think? So you've done a lot of cruising. If you could go back, where would you go? What was your favorite, do you think?
Well, I guess definitely our favorite was the BVI's. We chartered a boat there just because we wanted to try out cruising on a catamaran before we bought ours. Then as we sailed up through the Caribbean, we stopped in the BVI's again, probably for about 5 weeks. We had a bunch of visitors come because it's so easy to fly in and out of there, and the way the islands are situated between the American, and the British islands there, it was just very, very easy and very, very comfortable. The water's so beautiful there. Um, just in all the places that we cruised, I mean, all the way through the Mediterranean. The Mediterranean's, challenging. God, if you look at some of the events that's just happened recently, like in the Balearic Islands, with these water spouts and these storms. I mean, it's crazy. The weather is definitely changing. It's amazing. But we were very fortunate. I mean, we had very light winds in the Med. We had to motor, quite a bit,
Mhm.
versus sailing. But out of all the places through the Mediterranean and all the islands and everything we saw on the East Coast, in Bermuda, probably the BVI's were definitely our favorite.
Well, something I really enjoyed about Turkey and Greece is being able to anchor in these little coves, and there are Greek and Roman ruins on the beach with no one else there. To me, when I was a teenager, it was so interesting to be able to, in a way, connect with ancient history that's there for me to touch and to look around and try and imagine. I'm sure you went through similar experiences with you and your family.
Oh yeah, I mean the Turkish islands, the Greek islands. Simi is beautiful and has such a rich nautical history, and it's amazing just to be able to walk on those cobblestone streets, right? In the same streets that people and mariners have been walking for hundreds and hundreds of years. It's fabulous. It's great just to do as much history and research too before you go to these places to get a little bit of that flavor. And that was a fun part of doing it with our kids is trying to share that with them, and then having them write a little report and about history and places that they saw and their experiences. It was really cool.
I'll bet. Rod, I'd like to thank you for joining us today and sharing your experiences. It sounds like you've had some fabulous experiences, not only with your crew racing in Hawaii, but your family sailing to some faraway places.
Yeah, I mean it's been a fantastic journey. It's not over yet, but I think we've definitely checked a lot of boxes as we've gone through our sailing adventures, and so we're definitely fortunate to have done them, and we've had a lot of great experience with a lot of great boats. I mean, all the people that you meet along the way, both through racing and in cruising, it's just been a fantastic experience.
And the locals too. I think it's interesting meeting the locals. Rod, thanks again. Look forward to seeing you on the water up in the bay soon. And thank you also to our listeners. You can find more episodes of our Lessons Learned podcast in the how-to section of our website at uksailmakers.com. Episodes are also streaming on your YouTube channel, on our YouTube channel, that is, and are available on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Music. For UK Sailmakers, I'm Brendan Huffman, and I hope these lessons learned will help you sail with confidence.